Hey friends, welcome back to the Gentle and Lowly Co podcast. My name's Addie, your host, and today we will be talking about the importance of the church and why we need the church. And today I have my guest and my new friend, Erin Harris. She is the director of women's discipleship here at Gospel City Church, which is my home church currently. And so, Erin, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me, Addie. It's fun to be here.
I'm so glad you're here. And it's just been really fun getting to know you and getting just to learn just your ministry background. And I thought you're the perfect person for this conversation, just based on everything. I think we'll be able to have a really good conversation to encourage a lot of people, I think.
Awesome. I'm excited to do that.
Yeah.
What better than a staff member of a church, right?
Former church and yes, and staff member, yes. Mm-hmm. I think that is so true, and we're in the right place. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Okay, so first, Erin, just share a little bit about who you are and what this current season of life looks like for you.
All right. Well, I've been on staff at Gospel City in the role of women's discipleship for, I always lose track, but it's been about 7 years. Seven years? Maybe I've been coming here 7 years. Don't quote me on that. Don't go look it up, or maybe you can and correct me, send me an email.
Yep, but let you know when your anniversary is.
Yeah. But I've been here full time for several years, and I work in our women's discipleship, so it's my sole job. So I get the privilege of just thinking through intentional ways for women to be discipled in their walks with Jesus. And some of that includes, too, just ways to get women together, because girls like to get together. So we make space for that. And so that's what I do here at the church. I just bought a house last summer. Yeah. So I'm currently learning what it means to do lawn maintenance, which not my favorort thing, but I'm getting there. I'm growing.
Getting there.
We all have to grow in places.
Fun. Yeah. It can be, I promise.
We'll see. I'm a dog mom. I have a 10-year-old Labradoodle named Benedict. He's he's the best dog. He's actually the reason a lot of my friends have dogs, because they meet Benny and they're like,
impressive.
This is a perfect dog. Yeah. I need one of these.
Of course.
And then they all regret their decision.
Because not every dog is the same.
No. So that's a little bit about me. I'm an outdoor enthusiast. I love to camp, love to be outside. So I kind of die a little inside 9 months out of the year.
Yes, because those of you who don't know, but Indiana is our home base.
That's right.
We do have more than corn. I make that joke quite a bit.
What is the joke?
We do have more than corn.
More than corn.
We do. Even though it is going to be corn season, my uncle just planted corn because knee-high by 4th of July.
That's right.
It's so true. But then we get to go places, which is
true.
So much
We're
fun.
central in the country, so it's easy to hop on a plane, and our cost of living is so cheap here,
so
too.
cheap, which is so much lower.
You can travel more.
So you can go to the friends in California.
It has its benefits.
It does. It really does. Well, I always like to ask that question because I think it just helps our friends get to know who's, on the podcast, who our guest is. But first, then, let's dive into Music of the Week. And we kind of talked about this, which is kind of fun.
You give me a little heads up here.
A little bit. But so for me, I guess I didn't share, but I do listen to a lot of music. I kind of did, where I'm a creative, where, working from home a lot, music is just kind of something that's on. Usually it could be instrumental, or it is worship or folk or indie, kind of like what you mentioned. Yeah. But this week, there's been kind of 2 songs that have been like really on repeat. Allie Page, I didn't really know her stuff too much.
Okay.
But because it just like kind of, pops up how Spotify does its thing. And I'm like, oh, actually, who is this person? I should look up more of their stuff. It's really good. But this song, No Sweeter Love, it's so good. It's so beautiful. And I feel like just for this week, it's just been a really good reminder just of the gospel and just of God's love for us. And I don't know, it doesn't really feel like a traditional Christian song. I guess it kind of is, but I don't know, it feels maybe not as simple or just like subtle, very quiet or peaceful. It's more upbeat, which so it's like energetic.
Danceable, Addie?
Depending. I don't know, like she just kind of brings energy to it. So it's fun. Okay. I guess he brings the like really upbeat stuff is Forrest Frank. Okay. You know his stuff? Oh my gosh.
I'm so sorry. I like live in a hole when it comes to music. I return to my like favorites and
well, that's why this section is here.
Yeah, so what is the name of this?
Forrest Frank.
Forrest Frank. I'll look it up.
He is awesome.
Okay.
He has Christian music that's like hype, you know.
So I could run to his stuff.
Oh, easily.
Okay.
Like I just listened to Amazing Grace yesterday when Kodak and we were coming out of the dog park, and I was like, this is awesome. I was like, this is, you know, I love it. Such a classic song, but he made it like really upbeat and like a summer, you know, fun kind of sun windows down, you know, sunroof open.
Yeah.
Very, very fun song.
Nice. Cool.
Yeah.
Cool.
So definitely I would say check out him.
Okay.
I guess these other ones are more worship songs.
Okay.
They're more mellow in the sense of more reflective, which is
We
okay.
did have a rainy week last week, so maybe we're just vibing.
That's fair. That's very true. But Missionary Anthem, it's like a spontaneous and, you know, live recorded song, but by MBL Worship. I want to make sure I get that right. But I love their stuff. Yeah, MBL Worship. They have like some of the, I feel like, really great worship songs. They just feel really honest and real. And it's a really good song to put on if you're like, actually, I just like really want to, I don't know, get in that heart posture, because it's like 10 minutes long.
Oh, wow.
So
okay.
It's pretty good.
Nice.
Which is really nice. And then I was like, I have to throw a third one on here. Captain, it's also recorded live, but by Benjamin William Harris.
Okay.
His stuff is so good.
Okay.
He has this whole album my mom and I joke about where it's songs you didn't know I wrote. Like songs you know, but you didn't know I wrote them.
Oh, cool.
And they're really popular
Okay.
ones. So his stuff is really good too. Highly recommend him.
I'll have to take some of your recommendations. I'm really bad about like new worship music because our band does such a good job of bringing new
Such a
songs.
good
So
job.
I'm just like, I'll just wait until they pick us a good one, and I'll
they're
like put it
the
on my
pros,
playlist.
You know,
yeah, like
in the sphere.
they're the ones that are weeding all of the other stuff out. So like I
Yep.
just wait for Gospel City's worship band to come along with the new songs. But so when you asked me this question, I was like, man, my head's been way more in podcasts recently than it has been in music. So I was like, what music do I listen to? And I was sharing with you earlier, I'm more of like a vibe. Like I like to choose a vibe, and then I'll like find a song that has that vibe, and I'll just like let Spotify play songs for me.
Similar ones.
But I recently had the privilege. Do you know who Andrew Bell is?
Yeah.
Okay.
I love
so
his stuff.
yeah, his album
so
Black
good.
Bear. He just did like a 10-year, close to 10-year anniversary, like acoustic, quote unquote tour, because he literally played in Chicago and Grand Rapids, and that was
That's it. Wow.
But my friends and I went and
impressive, though.
saw him in Grand Rapids, and that was really fun to introduce those songs. And he had Hunter Metz open for him.
That sounds so familiar.
And he has this just lovely song, Paper Moon, that you'll just like melt when you listen to it. It's just so soothing, and like his voice is so lovely. So I've been really enjoying that. But whenever the sun comes out, I go full on like 80s vibe, techno pop. Like
That's so fun.
Do you watch a lot of 80s movies, or maybe
what's an example?
A lot. Like what is what?
An example. Of
I'm trying to think. One of my favorites is probably not terribly appropriate, and I suggested this movie to a friend of mine and for her daughter, and then I like watched it again, and I was
You're like, wait a minute.
you can't trust anything from the 80s. You can't. But don't rely on your memory from the first viewing. But just like any moment where there's like, if they're staring into space, or they're having this like there's an epic moment in an 80s movie.
Well, I think like Back to the Future, was that, is that
maybe.
too old?
I'm thinking.
Or too early? That's too early.
It's more like vibey. I'm not doing this like genre justice, but that so think of like, have you heard of like M22 or The Midnight? Like these are all recent bands that like get the feel right. And that's the vibe I go for in the summertime. Like that's just what I want to like always feel like it's 80 degrees out with my windows down, with like a icy beverage in my hand, you know, like, and just driving down the road enjoying life. So I really enjoy a band called VHS, because they nail this like sound. They're just one of my favorites.
That's very cool band name.
So I just return.
Yeah.
I'm like VHS collection, and then Foals are a couple. And if you listen to them, please don't judge me for whatever like they say, because I'm about the vibe.
Yes, the vibe. There are some songs where I'm like, I just really like the music,
it just gives me that good feeling. But when you were sharing about No Sweeter Love, it did remind me like my favorite. I feel like I have to throw out a Christian song here. So so my favorite Christian song, hands down, is How Deep Our Father's Love for Us.
Yes.
Yeah, it's like the best. So when you were talking about No Sweeter Love, I was like, wonder if that's a similar theme there.
Kind of.
So I think that song is just beautiful and so rich and true. So there's some songs that have been going around the Harris household.
I love that. Well, this is really good because I, like you, similar to Lee, where I'm like, I didn't always like branch out in my genre and I didn't know other songs or other artists and stuff. And so I was just like, I listened to the same things, which isn't bad.
No.
But then I'm like, okay, this feels like the same day.
I know. I need to branch out. Well, I also
is good.
Really get made fun of by my friends because I'm really bad at remembering lyrics. Like even the same Christmas carol year to year, I cannot remember the words to them. So like for me, it's always a new song.
Well, we sing it once a year. I feel like that's fair unless you're like Christmas in July kind of.
But I'm the kind of person who turns on the Christmas station right at Thanksgiving, and it's like a month and a half. Yeah. So probably by like the 30th time I've heard, you know,
I should know this.
Winter Wonderland. I should be able to sing that along with that, and I fail every time. But that's okay. It's part of
that's why Spotify or like they have the lyrics now.
That's
or
right.
you can go look it up.
I still won't remember. It's my personality fail.
I know, but it's fun. I don't know. It's a fun thing, and this would be great though because, like I told you, you have a road trip coming up, and so
let me know if you. I have not to like pat myself on the back, but I have been told I make really great playlists. But I'm like, I don't know who these people are. I just like this song. Click. I'll send you a few.
Yes, please. This is awesome.
Because you're going to South Dakota? South Dakota. Because it also matters where you're going, what you listen to.
Yes, that is so true.
Like if you're going to Florida, different playlist.
Totally different vibe.
You know, it's very important. Yeah. East Coast, different playlist.
Different. Yes, I totally agree. And I will say the national parks are like some of my favorite people. That like that band.
Oh yeah,
it's so good.
I like them
I feel like you would love.
Yes, I do enjoy them.
Okay. Yes. Okay. We love all the music.
We love the music.
So good.
Good chat.
Good things. Can go. Probably have enough music, hopefully, for maybe another couple months, which is great. But we'll jump into the theme of the week. And so this week, you know, just kind of looking back at the week, I feel like the Lord just was really reminding me or really pressing this idea of like having time for people and not being in a hurry almost. And just like, okay, I'm in a very flexible season. I feel like you kind of mentioned that to me. And it's like, well, if you have that, then, and you've been praying for that, maybe that's my case. And it's like, well, am I using it to the best of my ability too? So I had a garage sale this past weekend over Memorial Day. It was garage sale weekend at the lake, which was really fun. Everyone coming out, you know, with their golf carts and everything. And then, you know, just really having really good neighbors because and it like stormed that night and then the tents, you know, everything. No. It was insane, Erin. It was crazy. It felt like we were going to parachute away.
Oh my gosh.
Like two of my neighbors came over and all the stuff, but like it was so good. I just find myself really thankful for people who would be willing to pause and take time like that for me. And I wanted to do that, you know, for people who are right around me. And even at a small group on Tuesday, we had like our fellowship night, and it just was really good just to be present with people. Nice. And I think that's been probably a bigger theme throughout this whole month of like, am I being just present? You know, the summertime speeds things up, you know? I feel like everyone always has a bunch of things to do, which is great because we're like, finally, it's warm weather.
Do everything.
Really nice after the very cold and snowy and, you know, rainy time. But it's like, okay, you know, it's good to have margin and just time and space for people. And if you have that, then I should be present with the people wherever I am.
That's great.
So, yeah, and even like people at the dog park.
Sure. Like, just make a friend, right?
I might not see them again, or maybe I will with Kodak, my dog. But it's like, yeah, of course, like let's just take some time to get to know these people and be kind.
That's great.
And we'd leave it better than we found it. So, yeah, that's kind of been what's standing out for me this week.
Nice.
So what about you, Erin? What's been standing out?
I actually love that question because I've noticed in the last probably 10 years of my life how much the Lord works in themes in my life. And usually it's more than just a week. It's kind of like an ongoing thing for a very long time. So, and I'm also always trying to find themes to teach, because we do a couple of events here for women's discipleship. But one thing that the Lord's been just like kind of kneading into my heart recently is a verse from John 10:10 where Jesus promises that he brings us life abundant. And I've had I joined we did an academy class last year, which is kind of like a deeper study of biblical theology. And it gave me some new perspective on heaven. And I was like, kind of mind blown, but also like super stoked. And I was like, okay, I am ready for heaven.
I'm ready now. Yes.
But I've just been kind of thinking through what heaven, like, because, Jesus has said that he's brought his kingdom here and his Spirit is in us. And so we have the access to that now. So I've just been, I guess I would be saying I've been more looking for that theme than seeing it right now, because I think in my time specifically with the Lord, he's been giving me passages that are kind of around that theme. And I think I actually recently, I'm not as young as I'd like to be. And I think I've gotten to the point in life where I'm like, at what point in life do you stop viewing what's ahead as a possibility and just viewing it as like, all the possibilities are behind you, so now you just live out until you die. So I'm not that morbid, but sometimes. But in any case, I'm vibing with Solomon and Ecclesiastes right now, and just like asking the Lord, what are the possibilities, and what does abundant life look like before He returns and before we're with Him forever? So that's been kind of swirling in my brain the last week. Yeah,
that's a hugely, I think, important way to live, and, living expectantly, for Him, and to see, the pockets, I feel like pockets of His peace, and just wherever we are. And sometimes it's really easy just to not live with that mindset, I feel like set above, and to be looking for it throughout the day, because, we can just so easily just go throughout our days, throughout our calendars, and be like, oh, this is important. But I think that's really good that it's like, okay, let's pause and be like, where can I see your hand? Where can I see heaven here? And I think it's a good, maybe like a healthy practice to be able to, I don't know, really press into something more than just being like, okay, this is what I've seen in the past, or just like reflecting upon the week, but really like, oh no, this is what you promised. And so I'm going to look for it. I'm going to be expectant. Maybe knock on some doors if you wouldn't otherwise. When the Lord kind of like revealed, or got you excited about, this whole new thought, possibility, and just this whole new topic and stuff.
Well, I'm excited for heaven. Yeah. That's for sure. And I'll do my best to be excited about the here and now.
In the here and now, yes. Because He can help with the here and now,
but too. I think it's an important place to get in your walk with the Lord, because we live in a very distractible culture that wants us to believe that we're chasing what we see. Yeah. And that's really... it's an empty pursuit.
Yeah, so. And it's inevitable. Like everything will fail. And Ecclesiastes or Solomon, everything is meaninless. Like...
Yeah, like, I'm telling you, I'm vibing with them right now.
Like there are things, but at the same time, I'm like, everything does have meaning. Yes. So like there's a balance, but also like this world, it is a vapor, and everything will pass. Yeah. So like there's that reality. Right. But it also like, it just brings to my mind of like, well, how can we steward it well? Yeah.
And that's the possibilities that are endless, right? Right. Is that the Lord makes everything new. And so we get to be part of being, cultivating a ground where He can do that. So that's exciting, but yeah.
Or that for people.
The big church and the little, the big C and the little C. Yeah. So, I mean, when you talk about the church globally, essentially that's the body of Christ. Anyone who's put their trust and faith in Jesus is part of the church. And so you bump into somebody while you're at the, the national park? Where are you going?
Oh. Mount Rushmore.
Well, you're at Mount Rushmore. I can't say it now. Well, you are at Mount Rushmore, and you bump into somebody who happens to like, somehow you find out they know Jesus. Like that's a part of the global church.
Yep.
And we've had some really exciting connections here at Gospel City, just globally, incredible opportunities for missions work, that those saints that are working so hard and going through so much, like that is the same body of Christ that we are a part of. So I would describe the Big C Church as, anyone who loves Jesus and is a part of his family, his body. And then obviously the local church is the one where probably the more like we can like explain, oh yeah, my church, it looks like my church, it's gray and it's got like not all of the doors match and whatever your church looks like. And my pastor looks like this and our youth pastor looks like this, and you have more of an ability to kind of define it in more like tangible terms because it's
context.
like, I see, but same concept here. Yeah. People who love and know Jesus and have been saved by grace, and you are all part of the one body. So that's how I'd kind of describe, loosely, big church, little church.
Very loosely. But I think it's helpful, just like be like, okay, this is what we're talking about, and this is where we're going to go.
Well, because I think what maybe you're asking is, some people say, you might run into people who have this really uncomfortable way of asking, do you believe in Jesus? Yeah. And so instead they say, where do you go to church? And in saying that statement, you might be saying, I'm affiliated with this denomination, or I go to this building, and that building is your church. And what we're getting at here is the church is the people. It's everywhere. Yeah.
Yep. Which I think is so unique, I guess, to like believers, I think it is in some ways where it's, I can think back to, I don't know how many encounters, but, traveling on an airplane or something and just like, oh my goodness, like, okay, like you had a great conversation and never see that person again. But, like you just have this different connection because it's of the Holy Spirit,
Yes,
and you're
absolutely.
like, oh my goodness, like you just understand, you speak the same language, which is just such an incredible opportunity, wherever we go. So I love that. And kind of what we're getting at, where the church can be everywhere. So I wanted to dive into Acts 2, because, you look at the Gospels, look at Jesus's ministry and his life, and, then it's like after that, it's like, okay, well, what happened? And then the church was born. And then I feel like Acts is such a great catalyst of like, okay, this is what Jesus, like after, what life looked like after Jesus, and it's what we're supposed to continue to do today. So, Acts 2 is when the church, very first church was being built, shaped, and formed. And, sometimes I think it's helpful to go back, obviously to scripture to look at this is how it started and began, but how many years ago was that? We've maybe strayed a little further away from what that first, encounter was. And sometimes, just with, going to church, sometimes we can get, I guess, like caught up in the accessories of church, kind of like what even mentioning of like, oh, it looks like this, or it's this big or this small, or it's in the middle of a cornfield or something. But sometimes maybe, we've heard the term, and I don't really love this term, but, church shopping. Or it's like, but then we don't commit to a church because the music's too loud, or we don't like the preaching style. Like, it's just more opinions rather than, what are we truly looking for? And so really, how do we shift our focus away from those personal preferences when trying to attend a church and really focus on, Jesus and the gospel and remembering, what he's done for us?
Yeah, well, when you think about the Acts 2 church, like that was so close in proximity to when Christ rose from the dead and then ascended back to heaven. And they're all in this like place together. And I can only imagine the excitement, the passion, the buzz of Jesus. Have you heard what Jesus did? Did you hear what he's done? And I think that's like the first question that we have to ask ourselves is, how have we lost that Jesus?
Yeah, like, that anticipation.
Yeah, you say, like you said earlier, like when you bump into somebody and you have that common language, because we read the scriptures and we all, but like to have that like when you come into your church together, really should be what you're like hoping for, right? And I think a lot of us nowadays have gotten to the place where church is about what serves us versus what we bring to the table. And it's not about our heart posture to worship the Lord and to serve others, but it's about oh, it doesn't fit my, the pastor isn't cool enough, or their music's boring, or their music's too loud,
there's
or
too much smoke, or there's not enough.
So there's so much preference that I'm like, where did Jesus say, like, if you don't like there's guidelines for arguing in the Bible, but none of them have to do with your preference on worship, right? So, I think I would just encourage people in that concept of like I guess the question is, how did we get there, and how can we find our way back to an Acts 2 model?
Yeah.
And I think it's a lot of self-reflection to start. Like, are you coming into church because everyone that is in that building needs to serve you and give you an experience to make a way for you to worship God? Well, you should be worshiping God with your breath.
Yeah.
It's
we
not
can do that anywhere.
Yeah. And your outflow should be coming together with others who are doing the same and saying, like, Jesus, and he did this for me today, or he's done this week, or he's ministered to me this way, and I've seen him work this way. And I'm not like, no church is perfect.
No. Yeah.
I've been to lots of churches, and no church gets it right. We don't get it right. We are as offending as we are offended in life, right? Aren't we all?
Yes.
We're all hypocrites, and we all just want everyone to hold the standard that we refuse to hold ourselves.
Yep.
So I think when we get to this point where we're finding ourselves really critical about church, that should be a heart check. That should be, I need to talk to Jesus about that, because now, obviously, you don't want to walk into a church and they preach something that's completely off base, and you're like, that's not in the Bible.
Wait a minute. It doesn't line up. Yeah.
That's not a preference, though.
Right, exactly.
That's like doctrinal sound things.
Yes.
That's not like, I don't like the way the singer on stage curled her hair this week. People can get petty. Or, we used to, not here, but I grew up in a church that had those original communion tables with the scroll and flowers. And it was really important how the flowers were laid out. And beautiful. And I think it's great to honor things like that. But at the same time, again, we worship God in spirit and truth, not in the way that we decorate our church building or all of that. So I'm rambling now.
No, but like the heart of the matter, like is truthfully the heart.
Yes.
And of course, like I think that we'll get into that of like, okay, well, what are good things to look for in a church, and it's so important. But I think with just being in America, we have such an influx, and almost surplus of places to choose to go and the freedom to go. And sometimes that freedom can clout your, just be a self-serving thing
100%.
Rather than why are we going? Like, are you just going to sit in a seat and then to check out? Like, I mean, anyone can do that. It's not hard to go to church. I think it's hard to be in church and to be present in church, and to be fully known. And I think that's like, we can miss the mark where, we can look today, maybe it's so far away, but there are so many good churches where we're doing, it looks different than what it was, but like the core principle of like why we're gathering together is to, put our focus back on Jesus. And regardless of the week we've had, and, if it's been really hard, we can come into a place where we're known, we're loved, we're seen, and people can help us carry that and encourage us. Or we're just really excited to gather together and to glorify Jesus, and to remember, because we're excited to gather together. And I think just for someone growing up in church, when you wake up on Sunday and like the first thought isn't, like, are you excited to go? Or you're like, oh, I'm just going to, maybe next week, or I'm going to sleep in or roll over, like, oh no, I'll wait till my mom comes wake me up or something. Like,
well, and COVID gave us the opportunity to say like, I just don't want to be with people today, so I'll just stream it. Right. And I didn't like today's message, so I'll stream, and that's a whole nother conversation of the importance of the church, and we might get into that. But when you have the option to not go, or you have the option to go elsewhere, it makes it really easy to not stay committed to the thing. And on the sense of the preference, I do want to be mindful that like sometimes places are so distracting for what you're used to that there's nothing wrong with that. If you go to a church and you don't like I think the biggest thing is typically music. When people aren't happy, it's usually the way that the music is done. And I think if it's really distracting to you and it really puts your spirit in the wrong way every week, then maybe find a different church.
It's like not the right
It's
one.
okay.
Yeah, and it's okay. Yeah,
but to just be like, these are my preferences and I will not break from them, I think that's where you need to be like, where's my heart in this?
Yes. And while I was writing this question, really thought of Pastor Brent's message 2 weeks ago, was it? And so I'll definitely link that in the show notes. I think that was really helpful. Just really call up, just to be like, okay, is there anything that's getting in the way of my true worship? Am I coming to truly worship 100%. Or am I, filled with the thoughts of what's going to go on later today? And it's like, well, am I really living a sacrificial life for the Lord? Like, is my time really his or is it mine? And so I think that's a very helpful resource for people just to go and to listen to. I think it's really helpful. And preferences, they're not bad. I mean, we want to be around people who are like us. I mean, that was
we're ingrained to be, we gravitate to those that are like us, but that's actually not how God designed the body.
Yeah, we're all very different though, and then I think that's something that's good where obviously in Indiana we're live very different similar lifestyles and things, but
Midwesterner.
Yes, you're all very similar in that way, but there are so many different like life stages and career choices that people have had. And one of the things that I loved that drew me to Gospel City with small groups is everyone is in a different season or they have a different career, like I said, but the core thing is the gospel. Like everyone in my small group is much more experienced than me, and they're all married and have older kids, except one of our other small group members is younger like me. And so, but at the same time, I'm like, that got me excited because the gospel is the core thing, and we're all very different, but we can learn from one another. And there's so many more things that, we can have a good conversation because we all share that together. And it's good to be around people who are different than you too. And that's what the church should be, a place where everyone's welcome to come. Yeah. So, I think it's a good point for sure. I think it's, we've kind of seen, you mentioned COVID, with the ease, where I feel like we already had it pretty easy in some senses where we have so many places to go to, just locally, but then the ease of streaming, just turn it on and, I can just do that. So kind of from COVID, unfortunately, though, I know you've seen friends, maybe walk away from the church, or I'm just not going to go to church in person at all anymore. I certainly have had, friends in those seasons, and it's hard to have that conversation. And so for our friends, where maybe they've made that choice or they're even just wrestling with their faith even, and so they're just going to take a break from church, or they're just not gonna go and they're just gonna stream online. How can we still love our friends, maybe who have been hurt or they're opting for just an easier solution, I guess?
Yeah, I think I'm a tough love kind of girl. So I feel like the answer for me here is similar to the previous answer. Like, we need to have a heart check here. But I think it's important to be compassionate towards their experience. So if you, like you mentioned, like someone that was hurt by the church, well, you can't just throw that out the window and be like, get yourself to church. Like, it doesn't matter. Like, forgive and forget, yada, yada. Like, I mean, yes, but, there's validation in the fact that they were hurt. I think we need to be mindful, especially, and I don't lump just the younger generation in this. I feel like the younger generation is the best at this, but like, I was hurt, I was scathed, I'm out. Like, I don't need to be treated this way. I don't deserve this. And I would say that older generations, this is a far bigger conversation on how I feel like I've seen culture drift of like older generations beginning to act like younger generations because of social media. But anyway,
another podcast episode,
another topic for another day.
Yep.
But I think that we're all guilty of you don't deserve that kind of treatment, and the true inability to actually forgive people. I think because of the opportunity to stream, the opportunity to find a different church, the many options that we have, we can just walk away and dust off our, hands and be like, I'm done with that. I don't want to do that anymore. And it's so opposite of what Jesus calls us to do, that's where I would say being compassionate. Like if your friend walks away from the Lord, they walk away from the church and they walk away from the Lord, that's not you don't just say, you're not living by the word. They don't care. Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
They're done, right?
Yeah.
But if you have friends who have decided the church is not for them anymore because it's too hard, weekends are too busy, it's too far of a drive, whatever an excuse we come up with. I just think that's a tough love situation where you have to say, look, I love you, friend. I mean, Scripture tells us to admonish those that need it, right? To to encourage the idle, to not just say like, hey, it's cool if that's what you want. Like, tolerance is not the option here. The answer is really to say, I love you enough to tell you that I really think you should be going to a local body somewhere. So I think like if your friend is hurting and they've walked away from the Lord, they've been really, like something really inappropriate has happened to them in a church. Obviously, they're not going back to that church. No one would ask them to. But to completely walk away from the body where we are not only members of that, but it is a place for us to heal. So it's like basically saying, if you're the hand, I'm cutting myself off and walking off, and I'll thrive over here just as a hand by myself. You're going to shrivel up and die.
That's not the way that God designed it.
Exactly. So those are some things I would say if someone was like, to encourage someone to get back into church, I think I would just, if they're really resistant, I would just keep inviting, keep sending messages from a church that's either near them or my own if they're near me, and just saying, invite. We had a pastor here for a long time who would always have the culture of invitation. No one's offended by an invitation, right? Yeah. So don't get to tell you're blue in the face. Hey, you want to go to church Sunday?
You never know.
You never know.
Yes.
And then you have to really rely on the Holy Spirit's work in their life.
Absolutely.
Like, you're not going to be the one that strong-arms them into choosing going back to church. So,
I think that's a good answer. And, I am younger a little bit, and I think it's easier for those of us who are younger to not have those harder conversations, either because we just want to believe whatever we want to, or, like, oh, that's what we heard, so that's it, and we're not going to... From
your friend?
Yeah, from a friend, or we're not going to sit down, or, oh, actually, they've just moved on, so it's not worth it. In social media, I love the good that it can do, but also there is the bad, where it's like, oh, we can just see so many things and not have that face-to-face conversation and just make preconceived ideas without actually being like, hey, let me like sit with you and, over coffee, or invite him over for dinner, whatever it is. And just like the culture of distraction, I think it really prevents those hard conversations at times.
Well, and I think a little bit of the hard about Sunday is that we're not in a rhythm of setting aside a day. And so whether you call it Sabbath or you just say, this is the day I go to church. Like, I mean, I was in church the first Sunday I was alive. And I've missed very few between now and then. So I'm like, a Sunday is not an optional for me. It's the thing that we do. And I, even those, like, there are mornings when I wake up and I'm like, man, like, it's actually really about putting an outfit on versus
that's really what it is. Like, okay, I gotta.
That's so what nice. COVID broke into me. Like, pants, fair. Optional.
Yes,
but all that to say, it's not a rhythm for a lot of people anymore, and so people work on Sundays, and so how do you build in a rhythm of body life in a church? When it's not rhythmic for the rest of the world? Why would I prioritize this thing that I'm still trying to decide if it's important to me anymore? you know, and a lot of people are like, well, I'm fine. I'm cool with Jesus, but I don't go to church. Like, I'm not religious. I'm like, you know, and that's like, well, did you read what Jesus said about the church?
Did you read what they did? Like,
do you know how much he values the church? How I always come back. Everything comes back to Genesis. We were created for one another.
Yeah.
We were not created to be alone. And we need each other. And so for us to isolate and to choose to try to do the Christian walk without the Christians,
it's impossible.
It's so hard.
It's very hard. I mean,
not
you can
fun.
try, but it's very
you need people in the trenches. Right?
Like, there's no one to lift you up.
Yeah.
You know?
So like you're saying, like you bring your generation's like, oh, I don't want to call anybody out on that.
Yeah.
Okay. You don't have to be like, you don't have to push them in the dirt and say, hey, it's time
kind way
take in a coffee,
to do that.
Be gentle about it. Do the things that you guys like to do, you know?
Yes.
And just encourage, like, I think the ministry of invitation is huge, but no one dislikes an encouraging friend either.
Yeah,
and so
absolutely.
Sit down with your friend and, hey, what's going on? What is it exactly that you're not loving about church right now? Is there some way that I can like help you with that? Is there some barriers we need to break through? Maybe you just need to make an appointment with someone on staff at the church and say the things that are on your chest. Just get it out in the air, and then you can feel like you've been heard. So there's so many ways to re-engage in the church. And I think it just requires, but the thing is, people aren't going to do it on their own. So that you have to, if you're going to church, you have to be an inviter until they hit crisis. They hit crisis and then they're like, maybe I should go back to church. Right? Yeah. Anyway.
Yeah. No, I think that's really helpful and really practical too. Sometimes we can get in our head and be like, oh no, they wouldn't want to do this or X, Y, Z, you know, or like
totally.
You haven't just overthink totally.
We make decisions for people before we've even had the conversations with them.
And so I think the invitation, I think that is always so helpful. And, you know, like you're saying, everyone loves an encouraging friend. Be the friend that you'd want, you know, and I think that's always such a good thing that I'm thankful the Lord brings that back to my mind of like, okay, well, I would want a friend like this. So I'm going to be that friend for that person or for someone, you know, I just met. And so I think that's really helpful. And just something that's coming to mind, it's good to commit even, you know, if you're like, well, sometimes we want instantaneous results, and you know we always do. We always do. So we always want instant results, and the thing about church is that you have to commit to know the body,
100%, and
it's going to take time. And just something this week, you know, just at small group, you know, just around the kitchen table, we're just talking, and you know, you can get caught up in the timing of like, well, am I supposed to stay here? Am I supposed to go? Like, I don't know. Do we want to, you know, commit or plug into this church? And you could even be like a family. Do we want to have our kids here and then pull them out? They're going to make friends. Like, they're going to all be like these, you know, fake excuses or, you know, just things that feel very real because they are, you know, they're a big part of our lives. But something that was said is like, you know, be all in where God has you and not being, you know, looking on for the next thing and the next thing when you're going to miss what's in front of you. And if God wants to take you somewhere else, like he'll tell you. And then you'll have a body of believers around you who know you and have been praying for you and aren't surprised maybe when you leave. And they will send you on the way. There'll be sadness, but, you know, they'll be praying and be listening to with you and alongside you. And so I thought that was such a good encouragement of, you know, if, you know, maybe you want to move out west or you want to go somewhere, or you're like, wait, I'm only here in college for a couple of years. Does it matter? It absolutely matters. Even if it's 6 months, you know, you can make an impact wherever, and those people can impact you way more than you would ever think.
Well, and that's the beauty of the church, that no matter where you are in the world or the country, you can find a body that has a vibrant life that you can plug into. And the thing is that like, it takes time, but it's also kind of just a shoe-in, right? Like if I'm like, I run the women's Bible studies here at Gospel City. If a woman shows up in the week one and my hope is by week 2, she's like, here's a hard thing that happened last week.
Yeah.
Because I can trust these women because they love Jesus and they are here for me and they're not here for my, demise. They want to pray for me. So I think if there's anywhere in the world that we can walk through the doors and say, here's my authentic self, please love me, it should be the church.
It should be, yes. And you can celebrate things, but you can also be like, this was really hard.
Yeah.
And I'm, having a hard week carrying this, it should be both and.
Yeah. And sometimes the only gift that you can bring into a church is your own vulnerability.
Yeah.
Like sometimes you don't have the time to serve in kids ministry, or you were too hurt by the last church to jump right into something, but you can bring your vulnerability, and that goes a really long way.
It does.
So don't feel like you don't have anything, because we all got problems.
Yeah, everyone does. Yes, we all do, and everyone has probably been there. More people, have been where you have, and whenever you feel alone, be like, vulnerability helps people just be able to relate, and it builds those bridges.
Yeah, that's exactly what in 1 Corinthians, I think we can comfort those with the things that we've been comforted with. And so if you don't tell me what you need comforted with, then I don't get to share that comfort. And so do it. Share the things.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. So kind of for those friends, who might be in a new season, whether it's someone, family just moved to a new city, or they're going off to college, or they just feel the, releasing of a church and they're going to start over somewhere. What are some helpful characteristics to look for in a healthy church? Just for like our final thoughts.
Yeah. Well, you don't like the term church shopping, but when you're in a new place, it's really, but you do have to do that.
Yeah. You
have to pull up there. So this is what I would say to someone who's looking for a new church. First of all, you want to make sure they're doctrinally sound. So that means you need to know what you believe before you go out and be like, oh, does this church align with my beliefs? Well, what do you believe?
Yeah,
right.
Exactly.
So doctrinally sound. You can check it on their websites. You can listen to a few of their sermons. You want to ask if they have a mission statement that you can get behind. Like I think those are some characteristics you'd want to look for. One of the things I always say is that they teach from the Bible. If they don't open the Bible at all, you move on. Just don't collect 200. Pasco, however it says. I know it's Monopoly, but and I prefer exegetical, so line by line, verse by verse. I think that's really important. And look for places where they teach the Bible more than just on Sunday. So we are really intentional at Gospel City to have midweek Bible studies where we do the same with Scripture. Women teach women, men teach men, and that's really important to us. And so we do that. So do they open the Bible?
Yes. Very important.
Another one would be a vibrant body life. And I think you can see this when you walk in the door. Are people excited to see each other? Are they sharing their lives with one another? Are they participating in the worship service and more than just like obediently doing what the pastor tells them to do? Are they mingling among each other? Do you not see just like, okay, there's the young parents and but do you see like a good, like vibrant mix? I would look for that. And then I would also look for ways that are quick and easy to get involved, whether it's small group, service. Like, it doesn't mean that you have to, I'm new here, click, 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 sign me up. But like, is it simple? Do they have a pathway? Would you be able to get involved quickly? Because so often when we're new to a church, we come in saying, okay, I'll wait till someone notices me, right? And we're all the body of Christ. We can't do that. And we also don't come and be like, I'm here. Put me to work. But there's a good balance of like testing it out, seeing if you connect with some people there, but like, is it a kind of church that allows and it gives you space to connect quickly and has avenues for that? So I think those are four or five things that characteristics that I'd say for looking for a healthy church.
I think that's really helpful. And this was just a question I just remember going through in our college ministry, a lot of seniors, people graduating. It's like, wait, how do I do this again?
Yeah.
You know, because some people just went to that church or the porch, you know, just because of friends, which is not a bad, you know, it's not a bad thing if you don't know where to go. But it's a thing, you know, we will continually have to do, you know, is to commit again and again wherever we go, wherever God calls us to. And so it's a practice of knowing what we would believe and knowing what a healthy church looks like. But sometimes that's really hard to know today. So I remember that was such a good section that we covered, and we ended up reading 9 Marks of a Healthy Church, that little book. And so I'll link that in the show notes. I thought it was very helpful, just a small little book, just for, you know, maybe more in-depth study. But yeah, I would agree with all of those things, and to not sit on the sidelines, you know?
Yeah. I think that's the biggest gift you can bring to it. Like Romans says, let your love be genuine. And I think if we can all just live by that, that we'll just have less problems with our community. I wanted to read a quote that I wrote down for you from the Gospel Primer. Have you heard of the Gospel Primer?
Yes. Yeah.
It's one of my favorites. It's a go-to. But there was a quote out of that book that just jumped out to me when it comes to the household of the church. It says, when God saves us, he made us members of his household, and he gave us as gifts to one another. Each brother and sister is a portion of my gospel inheritance from God, and I am a portion of their inheritance as well. And I just love that, because when I don't come in with my genuine love, I'm robbing the church of their inheritance. And when I don't take part of that, I'm robbing myself, because I'm not enjoying all that the Lord has designed for us as a body. So don't neglect gathering with the church.
Yep. If anything, you know, from this conversation, that is the point. Yeah. Do not neglect the church, and it is to our benefit, you know, and to our maturing, you know, as believers. And it's such a blessing, even, you know, for people, I'd say, who grew up in church. You know, I think it's encouraging, and it's very exciting to see, you know, just a love grow for the church. Maybe, you know, it was in your rhythm or routine, you know, growing up, and maybe that swayed you one way or the other way. But when you see the church for how God's designed it to be, it is a beautiful place where we are called to be. And it's sometimes one of your favorite places. It can be.
It can be.
It can be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, because some of your experience in college was getting connected to a great body, right?
Yeah.
I spent a couple of years on the West Coast, and that was like, you find church. I always tell people I will move anywhere if I can find community.
Yeah.
And one of the reasons I live in the middle of nowhere, Indiana, is because I have incredible community here.
Yep.
And yeah, so there's been plenty of seasons in my life, in your life, where there's been a change up, and you have to do the hard work of stepping through a new church for the first time.
Yeah.
And I think you and I could both sit here and say, I survived it.
Yeah.
I'm better for it.
Yes.
And the Lord's blessed me massively because of it.
Absolutely.
And so don't fear it.
Yeah, don't fear it. Walk in obedience to whatever he calls. Yeah. And so thank you, Erin, you know, just
so
for
fun.
joining us for the podcast. And I guess for people, you know, if they want to stay up to date with what you're doing, you know, where could they do that?
I'm not super active on social, but whenever I go on Epic Adventures, I post something. And I think on Instagram, I think my name is E. Louise H. My middle name is Louise. Okay. So E for Erin, H for Harris. So E. Louise H. I think that's how you find me.
Okay.
If not, I'll link it.
I'll link in the show notes.
Yeah. And you can also, if you're local to Granger, Indiana, we run Bible studies on Wednesday nights here, and I get to teach that a lot of the times, and I love doing that. We do events for that too. So check out Gospel City Church if you're local, and if not, find your own local church.
Yeah, find the local church. I love it. That is so good. Just thank you again, and thank you, friends, for listening. Have a wonderful week, and continue to carry the gentle love of Jesus wherever you go.